what can happen to stocks of individual companies that are within an industry that is absolutely hated and almost everybody gave up on. And when those individual stocks deliver on growth, margin expansion, and profitability. Let me show you. Glass House Brands up 400% within a matter of months. Grown Rogue International up almost 1,500% in a matter of months. And now imagine this. What can happen to another stock within the same hated industry that is about to deliver growth, margin expansion, and profitability, and at the same time, barely anybody knows about it? I would call it a slam dunk in the making.
And started to connect the dots that Leef Brands is a similar opportunity to Glass House Brands. Leef is an interesting story the way it is today, but I think the way the story gets super interesting is the planting of Salisbury Canyon Ranch next year.
When I looked at Leef, I saw the same thing, that margins are not yet where they need to be, and now you're talking about the ranch, right? Because ranch is a important part to improving those margins. So like, why?
I would call it transformational.
Leef Brands is an interesting stock for me personally for several reasons. One, it is in an industry that's absolutely hated, the cannabis industry. So many people hate it. But if you look at the chart of the MSOS, which is a cannabis ETF, I mean, look at the pain, down 90% from the top, right? And of course, it recovered a bit now. But anytime you see an ETF go down 90%, you know that people are absolutely exhausted. They're going to throw everything out. They're not going to pay attention. That's why you are able to get great deals, and that's why you are able to see success stories like Glass House or Grown Rogue, because they were so cheap that when they delivered on performance, the stocks performed tremendously. Also, Leef is interesting because it is probably the cheapest, if not one of the cheapest, in comparison to other cannabis companies. I looked through like 20 different cannabis companies, and as you can see, you can see like Glass House here and how they trade in relation to revenues. Glass House trades at about 4 times revenues. Grown Rogue, which is not a part of this list here, it trades at like 10 times revenues. But if you look at other competitors, the average multiple over revenue is about 1.5. Leef is trading at about 1 times, right? Revenues that are going to grow from here, that have a lot of potential to grow from here. So while it's trading in an industry that's absolutely hated, it is the cheapest or one of the cheapest in the industry, and it also has one of the best growth prospects because as I show you later in the video, the growth prospects are amazing, the opportunity to increase margins are amazing, and the opportunity to reach profitability is also amazing. But I want to talk about, before we get into the specifics of Leef's business, I want to talk about just the industry in general, because there was a time when the industry was hot, right? And that was around the time where people felt like the legalization was around the corner. And now they kind of gave up on it. And right now, we have two candidates that are running for the president, and both of them want to legalize marijuana.
As we legalize it throughout the country, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's awfully hard to have people all over the jails that are in jail right now for something that's legal.
I just feel strongly people should not be going to jail for smoking weed. We need to legalize it and stop criminalizing this behavior.
Also, on December 2nd, which is just, a little bit more than a month from now, DEA is having a hearing discussing the rescheduling of marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Now, when such rescheduling happens and people start believing that legalization is right around the corner, they're going to go absolutely insane over cannabis stocks. Because right now, first of all, retail is completely exhausted. Institutions can't touch it. But when retail gets excited, an institution will be able to touch it. I believe that the stocks of cannabis companies are going to go to levels that don't even make sense. They're going to go absolutely crazy. I remember during that time, this 2021 time, look at this. I was watching this company, Millennium Sustainable Ventures, go from 20 cents to $10. That's 50 times. Now, eventually they failed because of some other reason, but the stock went 50x just because they said we're going into cannabis. That's it. Now, when I was paying attention to this company, they had nothing to do with cannabis. It was something else. But just on this sniff of cannabis, when the cannabis was hot, this thing went up 50x. And that's what I think is going to happen when the rescheduling happens, when the legalization happens. These stocks are going to go to levels that will not even make sense fundamentally. But they're going to go because people are going to be just chasing them, right? But now, one other thing that I like about Leaf is that the CEO and the company is operating this company whether the legalization happens or not. They want to be successful and do things and plan as if the legalization will never happen. And you can see already the success that Glass House had, GRIN had. Those stocks performed very well in this horrible cannabis market, and the legalization didn't happen yet. So for us, the upside is if Leaf can deliver on what they're promising, which is the margin expansion, growth, profitability, the stock is going to do well. And if the macro and the legalization or rescheduling happens, then sky's the limit, because companies from California, like Leaf is from California, will be able to sell their products across the state lines. And when that's allowed, then the California cannabis has the best brand. Everybody from every other state wants California cannabis. So I quit smoking about 40 years ago. You might think, well, how old is he? I'm 44 right now. Yep, you heard it correctly. I first smoked and I quit when I was 4 years old. I kid you not. I had a friend who was 6, who was 2 years older than me, and he was an expert. We found a pack of cigarettes in a playground, and those were the cigarettes that didn't even have the filters. And he had the great idea to smoke it. And I didn't even know what to do with it. So we lit it up. I started blowing into it. He told me to inhale. Not a good idea for a 4-year-old. I did, and it was a disaster. I got sick. huge headache, went home crying, and ever since then, I never smoked a cigarette, and I definitely never smoked marijuana or anything like that. But you know, what I find interesting is that when it comes to cigarettes, I mean, you can smoke it, right? My family smoked it. I smoked it when I was 4. But when it comes to marijuana or cannabis, you can smoke it.
Yo, he's smoking. Let me fly through the sky. Let me stay fly. They call me S-N-O-O-P, D-O-double-G-Y, D-O-double-G.
You can eat it. You can drink it. You can vape it. You can rub cannabis product on a hurting back or muscle sprain. You can smell it. I kid you not. You can smell it. I have a product that's like a candle. You can smell it. And you can even bath with it. I mean, can you believe it? I have a bath tea product. So the number of things that you can do with cannabis is incredible. But really, the market is really divided into like the flower, right? Where you can smoke it, and then you have extracts where you can extract it. And then, you know, those extracts, you know, can be used for end products like, you know, gummies, which, you know, you eat it. They can be used for vape pens, right? For the cartridges, you can put like, you know, distillate or oil into the cartridges and you smoke that instead of smoking the flower. And then of course it could be like a cream, right? For that you can spread on the wounds. But the point is that the products that are like non-flower product they use extracts. So you have the plant, and then the things that are inside the plant are extracted from the plant, and then they are then used as the raw material to make those other products that you see that sell in retail dispensaries. And LEEF is a company that extracts from the plant and produces a product like distillate, rosin, or concentrate, which are the base materials for those finished products. As I said before, the cannabis plant can be consumed in many different ways, right? You can smoke it, you can eat it, you can drink it, you can vape it, you can smell it, you can bathe with it, you can spread it on an injury or something like that. And the market is really divided into the flower side and the extracts. LEEF is in the extraction business. And there are different ways, different methods of extracting the thing that gets you high or the thing that heals you, that the cannabis properties, the chemical elements in the cannabis plant. It can be extracted using different methods. And LEEF uses 3 main methods to extract it: ethanol, solventless, and hydrocarbons. Learn it, remember it. So ethanol uses alcohol to extract it. Solventless, as the name suggests, no solvents are used to extract it. And when it's extracted in this way, it's more pure and people will pay more money for this kind of extraction, or the finished product that has ingredients derived by this kind of extraction. And then you have the third method, which is hydrocarbons. They are used to extract it. So in this section, I'm going to show you parts of the manufacturing tour. You will see the entire manufacturing tour in a separate video, but in this particular part, you will see Micah Anderson, who is the CEO of Leef Brands, walk us through these 3 extraction methods.
This is our ethanol line. So cup 30, centrifuge system. We bring in ethanol from outside. It comes through this chiller, drops it down to -40. And then it's essentially, think of like a washing machine. So a 30-pound sack fits perfectly inside of here, and it'll spin in here for 20, 30 minutes. Sometimes we'll double spin it, sometimes we won't. Now you've got ethanol and your cannabinoids are separated from the plant material and go into this building. And then we have nitrogen charged lines, which will shoot it through process piping into the next room. From the ethanol line, comes through the wall. These are our winterization tanks. Sits in here for a period of time. They're jacketed, so it brings the temp down again, keeps it super cold. And what happens is you have a separation process that takes place here. Good stuff goes through a 4-stage carbon filtration system, and then it hits a heat exchanger and puts it into this system over here, which is something that we worked with a company from Europe on designing. So when we designed this building, it was almost designed around this piece of equipment. So at the time, this thing was like massive for the industry, overkill almost, but we thought that we would be able to do hemp and cannabis at the same time under the roof. So we built this bigger kind of elaborate system. Fast forward to where we are today, and now we need every bit of it. So what was once big, now we've grown into. So this is solvent recovery. You got 800 gallons of ethanol that will sit in here with the cannabinoid oil, and what happens is it's got like a blade that strings it, it heats it up, and ethanol evaporates off and separates from the oil material. And then from there, you'll have a crude oil at this point, which will go into distillation. And that is in this room right here. So crude goes through the wall, hits our decarb skid. Decarb skid is here. Essentially what you're doing is you're converting the acid form of like a THCA into Delta 9, which is what the marketplace wants. They want a high D9 product. So that happens here. Once it goes through decarb, goes into one of our still skids, and this is where we do distillation right here. So, and what you'll end up with, just to kind of show you what the end product looks like, is something that looks like this. Yeah, so this is a jar of distillate. Every jar that goes out is branded this way, you know, so Leef Labs being the extraction company, Terred Weight, and this makes up about 40% of our business. This is like the base ingredient for about 40% of what is sold in stores. So vape pens, edibles, beverages, it goes into really all kinds of different things, even topicals, tinctures. So now I'm going to take you guys through solvent. So we've gone through ethanol. We're going to go through solventless extraction. This is where we make rosin, and then we'll get into the hydrocarbon lines. So this is our access rosin machine. You know, for those of you who aren't familiar with how rosin is made, so essentially we bring in frozen material, high-grade frozen material with a specific type of trichome head on it. We'll load the hopper up with material, load it with ice, get it to a certain temperature, and then it spins in there. And what happens is you're separating frozen trichome heads away from the plant material. That will then come through the machine, go into this vessel here, which captures the heads, and we'll use these different types of screens here, different meshes, to take different, think of it as like a grading system on the different types of heads that we're using. Put those into trays, those go into, let me show you guys what it ends up looking like. This is the end product of what we're looking for. And then this goes through the next process, which is done in here. This is used to make rosin, and different types of rosin too. So we do vape-ready rosin, cold cure, fresh press, you know, different fractions and different grades for what people are looking for. Some of it's edible grade, some of it's super high-tiered, bougie stuff, which is just made for dab rigs. So what the guys will do is they'll take that SIP material and then they load it into these special types of bags. And it comes in here and it's these two heated plates. And so pressure and heat will then basically ooze the trichome heads that are in that bag, and you'll get like a decarboxylated resin product that oozes off the side of it, and it's captured down here below. Rosin, it's like a growing segment of the market. It's a higher priced product. It's usually like caters more towards refined connoisseur types, people that really appreciate different flavor profiles and the fact that no solvent was ever used on the product. Now we're going to get into hydrocarbon. So we have two hydrocarbon setups. Essentially, this is a Type 7 license in California, so it allows for us to use volatile solvents. It's the hardest license to get in California just because of the dangers that can come with using volatile solvents. So butane, propane, hexane, all stored outside the building, come in. The guys will take frozen or dry material and they'll load these columns here with tubes of material and flush them with a solvent that runs through it. Once that happens, it goes into a collection vessel, and then they take a crude extract of sorts, and they basically will take that, we'll take it into post-processing, which happens in the next area over here, sits in vacuum ovens, pulls out all the solvents that are used in the product. So anytime anything's going out to final consumption or to the marketplace, all like 0 parts per million, all of the solvent has been taken out of that material. And these are the ovens I was talking about. So the guys will collect the different products that they're making out of here, so like more of a crude form of it, and it'll sit in here for a period of time under vacuum, a little bit of heat, and then it off gases essentially and pulls all that stuff out. So we kind of saw this earlier. This is what it looks like all jarred up. And yeah, so different forms of material, different strains. Our clients are looking for like a portfolio, a menu of unique genetics, stuff that can separate their brand from the next brand.
So essentially with hydrocarbon, you can create like multiple different types of products through the same material. So if we essentially we have orange elixir right here, I could make like a sugar, like a batter, which we have like really nice batter. And we can also make like a liquid live resin for vape cartridges that I will show you here too. And we also have like a wetter, saucy, high terpene profile product as well. So it's like, there's like just different fractions that you can make out of it versus distillate lines or other products like that as well. So this is these are all sugars right here, and this is just a high THC profile, lower terpene, but it still smells great, and it's great for dabbing. So, and look at that. This is a batter. This comes from the same type of material, 2 different consistencies. So depending on what the customer actually would like, you can see there's a clear as day difference between the two. And you can see the juices in there, that's basically all flavor.
Why customers buy from Leef Brands? And by now, you should understand that Leef Brands is a supplier of the ingredients for the finished product, right? Like those ingredients that you show Micah show us in a jar. So if you are a brand, a maker of vape pens or gummies or the finished products, right? You need to infuse your products with the extracts, right? Well, do you really want to make those extracts yourself? First of all, do you have the right people? Do you have the knowledge? Leef spent more than a decade developing that knowledge, how to do it. And also, do you have or want to spend your capital on building an extraction facility like this? You saw these separate lines, right? Ethanol line, solventless line, and hydrocarbons line. That costs capital, right? And it's not like cannabis industry is flushed with cash, right? It's still federally illegal. So the institutions can't go into it, and the institutions can't really provide capital to this industry. So they're not really flushed with cash to be able to build out their facilities. And also with the example that Micah was using, that for hydrocarbons, you need in California a Type 7 license, which is the hardest to get because it uses volatile solvents, right? So as a brand, are you going to be able to get that license, right? So this kind of shows you the kind of moat or competitive advantage that Leaf has. So of course it makes sense that clients would want to hire Leaf Brands for the ingredients so that they can just focus on being a brand and selling a great product to the customers and communicating their message about their end product.
Yeah, so I'd say the farm is one important piece, but another one is their extraction facility in Willits, which is 5,000 square feet, state of the art with 3 different lines. One being ethanol, which is used for distillate, which is common in pens and edibles and lower cost concentrates. 2 is the hydrocarbon extraction, like the live resin, which is super popular, comes in jars. Also, the cartridges are really popular. And then 3 is doing the great solventless, the live rosin. And so I'd say we're talking a lot about the farm today, which is the exciting transformational event in 2025. But they've also spent, over a decade becoming experts at extraction. We toured the facility, we documented, what we saw there in our report. And it's not just the fact that they have the fanciest machines, the latest and greatest technology, but it's the people behind it. They have experts in extraction that are the best that I've met in the business. And so I think that the moat exists in a couple areas. I think the moat exists in terms of the cultivation side, but I think the moat also exists in terms of that state-of-the-art extraction facility, the equipment that's there, but also the people that are driving it is another edge that they have.
Now it's time to talk about how we as shareholders can make money on Leaf stock. And in order to understand this, we have to talk about revenues, margins, profitability, EBITDA, and things like this. So what you have in front of you is the income statement for Leaf Brands for 2022, 2023. And then I have the quarters broken down, first 2 quarters of 2023, and then first 2 quarters of 2024. So as you can see from 2022 and 2023, Leaf generates about $30 million of revenues. And by now, you should understand where the revenues come from. So most of the revenues come from the concentrates, from extracts, the ingredients, the jars that they showed us, the ingredients that go to make the finished product. Right? Whether it's distillate, concentrate, rosin, that's the revenue, most of the revenue. They also have one dispensary, which you will see a full tour of the dispensary.
Hi, my name is Miguel. We're on El Paseo Drive, one of the nicest areas here in Palm Desert. Beautiful strip of high-end stores, including the Leaf El Paseo, one of the best dispensaries here in the valley.
And they also have their own brand line, right? I have their product here. They have their own brand line.
Leaf Labs products that we have here, this is our in-house brand. Really nice, super natural. All of the ingredients that go into them are, so these would be our gummies. They come in different varieties, sativas and indicas, the more energetic effect and the more relaxing. And then our newest gummy being the sleep gummy to kind of help alleviate the insomnia effect.
But their own brand line generates like less than 1 million of revenues per year, and the dispensary generates about 4 million. So those two in total about 5. So most of the revenue is from concentrates, right? They are being a business-to-business supplier of ingredients for the finished product. So that's why I focus mostly on it, and that's where most of the revenue comes from. So you understand where the revenues come from, and so as of 2023, they are about a $30 million per year revenue company. And this is in US dollars, right? So when you look at the stock, you have to look at what is the stock market cap. It's about 25 million US as I'm making this video. And so it's trading at less than 1 times revenues, right? Then we have to understand cost of sales, because when I showed you and I told you that Leaf is undervalued in comparison to the competitors, it's because the competitors have better gross profit margins. Okay, look at Leaf gross profit margins are 30 to 35%. In the first quarter of 2024, they were 40%. Second quarter, they were 34%. Let's see how this compares to the competitors. These are the margins for competitors. Look at this. The average is 45%. Glass House, which I use as a competitor, it's 50%. Leaf is at 37%, right? Now, that's why the farm that you keep hearing this, the ranch, the farm is transformational. That's why it's because of these margins.
Leaf on a relative basis to a lot of cannabis companies is undervalued, and it's because it's an undercovered story, and the farm is a transformational event. And you don't see a lot of those in cannabis, right? If you're someone else that's just a concentrate producer in California that's kind of chugging along, where is the opportunity for them? Well, they can steal a little market share here, they can refine things a little bit here, and Leaf has those same opportunities. But what's absolutely different is because they're plugging in this, what can be fully planted, the 187-acre ranch, and it's that I think will help bridge that valuation gap, and I think that's the thing that investors can be excited about.
So if you go back again to the income statement, the cost of goods sold, cost of sales, what is this? This is buying the flower that is used to extract from where? From 300 different farms. Somebody else is growing it, and it's costing them between $20 to $30 per pound to buy from somebody else. But when they have their farm planted in 2025, that cost is going to go from 20 to 30 to 10 or less.
When I interviewed Jesse Redmond, he talked about your farm, and he said this is transformational. This is the language that he used.
I agree with Jesse. It will be a transformational moment for our company. Historically, over the past 8 years, we've relied on other cultivators to cultivate product that we run through our extraction business. We currently purchase around 125 acres worth of material on an annual basis today, spot purchase from many farms throughout the state. And the size of our permit, the business license that we have in Santa Barbara County, so we bought a 2,000-acre ranch. We spent 4 years going through the licensing process. It takes a very, very long time, and we were awarded the largest permit in Santa Barbara County. And we'll have our DCC licenses here in the near future at the end of this year, and then we'll be prepared to spring plant the fall in 2025. So the transformational element of it is that it's going to give us a predictable supply chain at a price per pound that we currently just don't have. So we're going to see our margins increase, and we'll have the ability to scale in a way that we just have been limited on our ability to do so in years past. The difference between what we'll be able to do on the farm once we're harvesting our own material there in terms of like bottom line COGS. Currently we purchase, and I'm just going to use round math here, but we'll purchase a pound of product that we use in extraction for $20, call it round math. We can cultivate that same pound for half that cost, $10, round math.
So that's why if we cut this cost, because they're going to grow it themselves or grow some of it themselves or portion of it themselves, this will improve gross profit margin, and it will get it closer to where the margins of competitors are, and then they will be able to get a valuation that's close to the competitors. Also, by bringing in the farm, their own farm, not only will they be able to improve the margins, they will be able to increase the yield because they have specific extraction lines. Remember? Ethanol line, solventless line, and hydrocarbons line. By having their own farm, they will be able to farm specific product that yields better for those specific lines. They can't do this right now.
I think the other thing that is almost equally as important is not just that our cost to produce the pound has dramatically decreased, but we can really get focused on genetics that perform better in terms of yield out of the extraction line. So when you're extracting 100 acres worth of product, the difference between a 5% yield and a 3% yield is millions of dollars. It's crazy how much it adds up. And that's something that I think that's almost more impactful, is that we're going to be able to really hone in on like what's called a golden batch, between the genetics that we grow and the SOPs, where we're growing a huge plot of land of the same exact high THC product, and we're able to bump those yield and percentages up dramatically from where we're at now. That's going to be very, very impactful to our business versus spot purchasing from different farms, where it's really hard to nail that golden batch, because you've got, a few thousand pounds from this farm and 5,000 pounds from that farm, and that material performs different through the extraction line. We'll really be able to get targeted on efficiencies.
Not only are the margins are going to improve, but the revenue is going to improve because the yield is going to get better, because they're going to grow specific flower for the extraction and for specific extraction lines. Also, now, because they are getting their product from 300 different farms, they are spending $80,000 a month on testing. When they grow their own stuff, they know they're not going to use pesticides. Their farm is located in an area where the mountains prevent pesticides from other farms to get onto their farm. So when they grow their own, they're not going to have to spend as much on testing. What is $80,000 per month? That's about $1 million of savings per year. That's going to come off either from operating expenses or from cost of goods sold, right?
There's other efficiencies that really all go straight to the bottom line. So testing, we spend anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 a month on testing costs. And we have to do that because we source from so many different farms. That's the only way that we can ensure that the product is pesticide free. Well, once it comes from our own material and we do the front end testing on it, and we know that we're the ones that cultivated it, we know what's in this material.
It's $1 million of savings.
Totally, all to the bottom line. And like, we specifically picked this farm because of where it's located, and we won't have these drift issues that a lot of the other farms in California have, where they have like a vineyard down the way that's spraying something that you don't want on your crop and it ends up on your crop. There we see that. It's a big problem in California.
Finally, when they have to source their flower for extraction from so many different farms, guess what? They have to have so many different trucks traveling around the state, picking up all of that stuff, versus having one farm and one truck driving from one location. That's going to cost on gas, on transportation, and all of these things. So 4 things. The farm is transformational because it will get the margins to about 50% or more, closer to where the competitors are. Yield is going to be better because they're going to grow specifically for a specific extraction line. Testing expenses are going to get lowered. Also, the transportation cost is going to get lower. And also, final thing that I didn't talk about, the product is going to be even better and more targeted towards what the customers want. And all of these things together, because of the farm, is going to be transformational for the business. I mean, look at Glass House. Look at the margins that they had in 2021. They were 25%, even worse than what Leaf has right now. Then they were, again, the same in 2022, and then the margins exploded to 50%. And then what happened with EBITDA? EBITDA went from them losing $20 million to being positive $25 million. And of course, also revenues went up, which we'll talk about revenues growing for Leaf, but a transformation in margins is likely to have a big effect for the transformation for the stock price. Because of this, Glass House now has a market cap of almost 600 million on 160 million of revenues. So about 4 times revenues. Glass House is trading where right now Leaf is trading at a fraction. Leaf has revenues of about 30 million and they're trading for 25 million US. If you look at Grown Rock International, they have a market cap of almost 200 million CAD, but the revenues are only 20 million, okay? But those revenues are higher margin revenues, and those revenues are profitable revenues. So the market, and also they're growing, but the market is rewarding a company like Grown Rock that has lower revenues than Leaf because margins are better and because those revenues are growing and because those revenues are profitable. Leaf already has, as of now, first 2 quarters, positive EBITDA on those lower margins without the farm even kicking in. Now, I will give you a warning though, that the management is hinting that Q3 is going to be a soft quarter. So when you see Q3 being reported, don't freak out. Leef Brands is a 2025 story.
Okay, so when you're saying the farm is so transformational, what's the big deal? Why can't others do it too?
I think you could get a farm. It's not just a farm. It is ideally suited for what they want to do. For Leef Brands, they actually don't need something as expensive as a glasshouse type facility because they're growing for extracts, not finished flower. And so they can do even potentially lower cost production because it is outdoor cultivation, may do some hoop houses eventually too, but generally focusing on sun-grown outdoor cultivation, which doesn't necessarily work fantastic for the finished flower market because a lot of consumers don't want outdoor flower. That's a long conversation. I think there's great outdoor flower out there as well, but typically what goes in jars in California is greenhouse flower or is indoor flower. What's perfect for the extract market is outdoor flower. And so that's exactly what they're set up to grow at Salisbury Canyon Ranch. And there are big barriers to entry. They have the largest land use permit in Santa Barbara County. You know, Kevin, Micah can explain how difficult that permitting process is, how difficult it is to find a place where that's ideally suited for your growing conditions. And so it's not just a farm, it is an absolutely massive farm that just on a square footage basis can be 40% larger than Glasshouse Brands when they're both fully built out. In fairness to Glasshouse, because they have the light depth capabilities, they can get more harvest, so the output could still be more from Glasshouse because they're getting more turns of flower, more harvest per year in the Glasshouse conditions. But in terms of absolute scale, it's really unparalleled what Leef is doing in California in terms of an ideal sun-grown farm, low-cost cultivation to feed the extracts business. If you were looking to grow finished flower, you probably wouldn't do what Leef is doing, but because they're looking to farm for extracts, sun-grown cultivation at scale is absolutely what you need, and they have an unparalleled opportunity there.
There's absolutely no question whether Leef Brands is an undervalued company. It's undervalued in relation to its competitors. It's undervalued in relation to its own numbers. So in order for Leef Brands to get a respectable valuation, kind of like what Grown Rock International and Glasshouse is getting, the following things needs to happen. gross margins need to improve. The company has to become, cash flow positive. And also the company has to grow revenues. And Glass House, at some point, it didn't have great margins. It didn't have profitability. And then it got great margins, got profitability, and it grew revenues. The same thing with Grown Rogue. It shows profitability, shows good margins, and it has revenue growth. So already you see how the company, how Leef Brands is going to address the margins, right? The farm, the ranch is the transformation that is needed to get those margins to where they are, close to where the competitors are. Now, the other thing that the company has to address is revenue growth, because the last 2 years, there has really been no revenue growth. So is there revenue growth from that 30 million? And the answer is yes. Organically, without any further acquisitions, with the farm and stable supply of the grow, the company is going to be able to reach 60 million of revenues.
Right now, you are a company that has a revenue profile of, a little bit over 30 million on an annual basis. What is the company going to look like, the end of 2025? Because I believe the farm is the story for 2025. What's the, revenue profile is going to look like? Because I want to give people a roadmap of where your company is going.
You're correct. We're roughly a $30 million company today. We've spent the past 4 years going through the licensing process on this farm in Santa Barbara County. And we're going to see the impact, the material impact of that is going to come in 2025. And I think that Leaf has not come really even close to hitting market saturation in terms of sales in California. There's still plenty of opportunity for us to grow. So I think with the farm coming online and a few of the other projects that we can discuss in a little bit in California, I think that we have a double in front of us. I think that we can go from 30 million to a 60 million company, a revenue rate without any sort of M&A. That's just organic growth. And we have a phased approach to bringing on those cultivation acres. And so it's kind of a twofold for us. We're going to see a revenue impact just because we're going to have a supply chain consistency that we have not yet had as a company, which is going to be a good thing for us. But then more importantly, I'd say, is that we will have a drastic improvement to our margins.
Now, so after hearing this, what can we expect or shoot for in terms of the valuation? Well, if they reach 60 million of top line without any sort of non-organic growth, and we put a multiple of what Glass House is getting, which is 4 times. I'm not even talking about close to 10 times revenues that Grown Rogue is getting, but 4 times, you could see a valuation reaching of 240 million, right? And considering today this market cap is about 25 million, you can see a nice 10x from here, right? But now, is this it? Well, no, because right now, Leef Brands is primarily in California, okay? And it has spent more than a decade learning how to extract, right? And Leef also has clients that are top brands, because remember, Leef powers other brands, okay? And those brands that are number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 in California, they are also top brands in other states. And those same brands have a problem of getting high quality extracts for the business in other states. So Leef is going to be expanding into other states. And what's interesting about it is that because in other states, the company will be able to sell its extract at multiple times the prices that it is getting in California, it will be able to get more revenues for the investment that it's going to make. But also, it is going to be able to do it at a lower investment because of the prior experience and learning that the company did over the last 10 years. Instead of investing, $20 million to get 30 million of revenues, the company might be able to get it for less than 5 million of investment into the lab, cultivation, whatever, and it should be able to generate $30 million of revenues on that 5 or less than 5 million investment.
When you say duplicated in other states, do you mean you want to have facilities like this in other states and also cultivation farms?
Yeah, yes. I think this was, call it V1, and I think that when we go to rebuild what we've created here, we can do it faster, cheaper, smaller than what we currently have here. We sell products to like the who's who of the state of California. So our clients are already the number 1, number 2, number 3, top 5 brands in many of the other states in California. And we're getting requests from our clients saying, hey, we really want you to come to, pick a state because they're struggling with finding the right manufacturing partners for their brands in these other markets.
Let's say you're a $30 million company right now, okay? Let's say you go to, I don't know, New York or New Jersey. You have, pick a number, 5 million, 10 million. What can you create in a different state with that kind of investment in terms of like revenue profile?
Some of these other markets can be as big as California, especially some of the East Coast markets. So I think that, what took us $20 million in investment to create in California, I think that we could do for even sub $5 million. Because of what we know now, the learning curve, we spent close to a decade refining the processes. And so I think that we could recreate the same thing with less money, if that makes sense. And the price point of where the products sell for in these other markets is a lot higher than California. California is this massive market, but we're also, from a value standpoint, we're a low-tiered price point state. Yeah, I can sell 10 times less and do the same amount of revenue in one of these other states than I do in California.
So now you can see the path to 10x without rescheduling, without legalization of cannabis. That's just based on, improving margins, growing revenues, and getting the proper valuation. Now, with rescheduling and legalization, I can't quantify this because it's probably going to get out of control. The valuations are going to be so crazy, and I can't quantify crazy. But we can't count on the politicians to making it legal, right? We have to look at this investment from the point of view of, does it make sense if this never gets legalized, right? But also, another thing that it's important to look at is margin of safety. How much money can we lose, okay? And because the market cap is about $25 million as I'm making this video, I am only going to look at one asset, which is the value of the land. I'm going to ignore the value of the manufacturing facility, which is a lot. I'm going to ignore the value of the dispensary. Now, if the valuation was 100 million, I would look at those for margin of safety. But because the valuation is only about 25 as of the making of this video, I just want to look at one asset. Probable value of the land. That's it. And then you and I can compare it to the market cap and decide, do we have enough margin of safety to buy the stock?
We kind of have an idea of what the upside is. but all the companies are always, tell you the upside and it's always great. But I also want to know the downside, okay? Like the margin of safety. You have this big land package. So what do you think your land package is worth, so that we can compare it to what your market cap is?
The one, I'd say, very valuable piece of real estate that we have in the company is the farm. This is all public knowledge. So we acquired the farm for $5.5 million. Owner financed. We put $1 million down. The sellers financed it for 5 years at 4%. So very favorable terms. We, since the acquisition of the real estate, have licensed it and put millions of dollars into infrastructure. So, it's built out. We've got an 1,800 gallon a minute well, which is big enough to cultivate the whole thing. Fencing, cameras, irrigation, just all the infrastructure that's needed to cultivate the space, and are in the process of having it reappraised right now. And looking at comps was one of the things we were spending time on this morning. There's a base case. You could argue that it's anywhere from 20 to 40, $50 million in terms of value, just based on comps throughout the state.
Management itself owns between 30 and 35% right now. Like Micah said, we do have a lot of key individuals that are part of the cap table. Mariusz had highlighted some of them. Of course, we have a bunch of NBA players: Jimmy Butler, Rudy Gobert, Jeremy Grant, Davis Bertrand. We have a bit of a stable of sports athletes on the cap table, and so all in, it's roughly between 50% with everybody. Yeah, currently there are 1.4 billion shares outstanding. It is one of the key factors that is stopping investors from investing in LEEF. Are you planning on rolling back the share count in the next 6 to 12 months? The answer is yes. We're keenly aware that we have a lot of shares outstanding. Generally, when you do a rollback, you pair it to very good news, right? We're doing this big deal, we're doing whatever. And for us, we were very farm focused over the last 12 months. And so, we're at a point where we feel like to the point, it is stopping investors from investing in LEEF. And so over the coming, again, public disclosures, but over the coming couple months, couple weeks, we will be announcing a plan on what we're doing with that. We're currently working with the board to put that together. So the short answer is yes. We're keenly aware that there's too many shares outstanding, and we're working on a plan to solve that in the near future.
So there you have it. This video is 1 hour long. Can you believe this? But there's so much to cover. I could make this video 10 hours long. But in summary, what do we have? Well, LEEF Brands is a very unknown stock. Barely anybody's talking about it. As you can see, the upside is huge. I believe there's a lot of margin of safety. The rescheduling or legalization of cannabis can supercharge the returns on this. So you just got to decide on your own whether this is something that you want to get involved with. Now, another videos that are coming, what you're going to see published is a full interview with Jesse Redmond, full interview with Micah Anderson, the CEO, full interview with Kevin Wilson, the CFO of the company, the entire tour of the manufacturing or the extraction plant, and the tour of the dispensary. I'm also planning, if I'm successful with this, to shoot some videos with some of the NBA players. Hopefully I'll be able to do this. So we'll see. Also, in the description of this video, you have a disclosure, because I have been retained as an IR person for this company. And as I always say, why do I do this? Because if my members of MCE, you are putting money into buying the stock, you deserve that this company has proper exposure and proper investor relations representation. You don't have to look very far what happens to the stock prices of companies that think that they don't need exposure. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts.
Show you guys a few of the jerseys if you want to see those. So Rudy, it's a big shareholder of ours. All of these guys are super into like the cannabis wellness side of what we do, so recovery products. Jimmy Butler's on Miami Heat. Ian, he's or Jan rather, retired. He just retired a couple of years ago. And then Jeremy Grant. And all these guys have been here except for Rudy. Rudy has not shown up yet. So Rudy, if you see this, you're due to come.